good place to go right now would be to log into the online service portal and then click on Moodle. So you just have that tool.
All right, and away we go. I'm just going to move this way down here into the corner. Hide that. All right, so I know that this step probably seems fairly obvious, but again, this is a Moodle 101, and so we really wanted to start with the basics, including how do we log into and access Moodle. And so when you navigate to your Sonoma State webpage, www.sonoma.edu, you'll just select to log in. And I'm already logged in. And once you do so, that'll take you to your Sonoma State portal, and you can navigate here to Moodle. So you might be wondering, why are there two instances of Moodle? And this one that just says Moodle is the current courses last semester and this semester. This Moodle archive, as you probably predicted from the name, just takes some of our older courses so that in case people need to access things that they've used in the past. But the orange button is where you will want to navigate in order to see your spring classes, because you already have a course shell there waiting for you to build in. And that's where you'll go to actually run your class. So let's go ahead and jump in. And then here we are at your Moodle homepage. So I just want to talk a little bit about how to navigate this screen, some of the important things that will help you just with basics. So how do you find your courses? So the first thing you want to do is either navigate here to your dashboard tab or to the area that says My Courses. And so I tend to land on My Courses. If you log into here and you don't see your course from this initial drop-down list, it might be because your course has not been published yet. And so it might be all the way down here hidden under Hidden Courses. And then for me, because I not only teach, but I work in the faculty center, I have all these classes. So yours hopefully won't look this messy. But when you go to My Courses, there should be a drop-down menu. And if you don't see your spring class, again, look under that bottom tab that says Hidden Courses, and that might help you find what you're looking for. Or you can go over here to Dashboard, and if I select Dashboard, that brings me to sort of a dashboard type feel, where I also see my courses listed vertically here on the left-hand side. And then if I scroll over here to the right, I also see some of those hidden classes that wouldn't necessarily show up in my published class list. Any questions about that first part, just logging in and actually navigating your way to your course shell? Because that's definitely step one. Okay, good, you're feeling comfortable with that. So the next thing is I'm actually going to go ahead and choose a class. I think that today I'll just play in my sandbox because that's a safe environment to build things that I don't really need without messing anything up. And I'd like to just review these blocks here on the right. Each of these little areas, they're kind of color-coded. These are referred to as blocks. And these are different ways that you can get information within Canvas. So let's start with the navigation block. And by the way, you can customize these blocks. So if there are some that are relevant to your class or to your students, you can keep them. If you don't want them, if it's not something that's useful to you, let's say, for example, if I scroll down to latest news, well, let's say, you know, I don't necessarily need Moodle to tell me my latest news, or that's not where I'm checking in to find out my latest news. I can either hit this small gray button here and it'll hide it, or if I press this little arrow button, and it's a little challenging to see in here, it'll actually dock it. So if I click that one, now I've actually docked that block over here. Now, you might be looking at your screen going, your screen looks a little bit different than mine, Kristen. And that's because there are different themes and different layouts that you can select for your class, depending on the way you want to set your class up. And I will review that once we sort of get into actually setting up your class. Just wanted to walk through some high-level basic navigation first, but if your screen looks different than mine, that's probably why. So again, when you get into your class, these two buttons here, let me see for those that I'm recording, these two buttons here on the right should remain the same when you see your blocks, in that you can hide it or dock it. And if you want it back, just hover over it here where it's been docked and just select again to bump that back out. Now it's here. So let's actually take a look at what these blocks do. The first block is navigation, and as you might intuitively guess, it gives you some sort of breadcrumbs to follow that'll help you navigate your class. So you see that it's giving me some information about the class that I'm in and the different modules that I've created in this class. Perhaps the most relevant, or the thing that you might use the most under the navigation block, is My Mail. So I do want to highlight that. The navigation block is where your communication system within Moodle will live. I know a lot of instructors choose to have their students notify them outside of Moodle, like, hey, please contact me at denver@sonoma.edu instead of sending me a Moodle message, but it's a good idea to check that regularly in case your students do send messages to you in Moodle. I try to, when I'm running a class, I try to check in with Moodle at least once a day just to make sure everything's running and that somebody hasn't reached out to me. You can also set your notification preferences, which we can talk a little bit about. That way, if you want to be notified outside of Moodle, you can add a secondary email to your Moodle account, correct or no?
You might be able
to. Okay, might be able to. So My Mail under the navigation block is something you'll want to know about. And then from here, I think these buttons will seem very intuitive if you're familiar with email, just how to compose a message, your inbox where you'll find your messages, if you choose to star things that are special to you or that you want to reference easily, sent trash, preferences, etc. Another area where you can locate My Courses lives here under the navigation block. So again, I could move easily from the sandbox course that I'm in now to a different class using that feature, or not. All right, any questions about the navigation block or about blocks in general? Yes, please.
I just had a question on the email. I actually went in and sent an email to my students.
Great.
I chose all recipients.
Okay.
And then it said add recipients because I wanted the email to come back to me also.
Sure.
I couldn't do it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's one of the critiques of the mail tool.
Okay.
Is that there's not the ability to CC yourself.
Okay.
Message.
All right. I thought I was doing something wrong then. Okay.
There's nothing new there.
So that's the best way to talk to all your students, is just do it through Moodle? Do you have all their addresses in there?
Go ahead.
Yes, that's certainly a way,
My
but
SSU, the faculty button on my SSU allows you to send a message to all the students, and it automatically copies you on it.
another feature that you might like if you want to reach out to all of your, is this announcements forum right here. And so every time Sonoma State creates a course shell for you, it automatically loads for you an announcements discussion board where you can push an announcement to everyone in the class, and then they'll receive it as a notification. And that's typically how I communicate if I need to send out big batches, but I also have TAs that have all my students' phone numbers, and so I always go with backup plans too. I'll say, I'm going to push this announcement. Can you please also text all of our students and either tell them to look for the announcement or give them the episodes? You know, this is what we would like to think of as the one-stop shop, but as you mentioned, it does have some limitations. So over-notifying in that way can be a little bit of a safeguard.
So I didn't understand his method of over-notifying.
Oh, so what he's talking about, remember that portal page when we first logged on that had all the square tiles? Mm-hmm. If you go to My SSU on that page here, I can actually bring that up if you want to see that. This is outside of Moodle, but just is a part of Sonoma State's structure. So again, you just go to log in, and once you're here, you'd select this button, the My SSU.
Can you go ahead and do that?
Yes, absolutely. I'll walk through this. Once you get here, then you can go to My Schedule down here in the bottom. This will bring up a list of your students, and here on the left I hover over that long enough, it'll give you a class roster, and that will give you ways. It'll say, do you want to send an email to all of your students? And that's another way that you can grab all of their emails without having to copy and paste them into a spreadsheet or something like that. That's another way outside of Moodle, but still within the Sonoma State system, that you can also notify your students.
And Ernie's right, you'll get CC if you do it this way, which I'd say is an advantage of doing this way, but an advantage of doing it in Moodle is that you have a log of all of the messages that you've sent in Moodle. And
Right.
students also have that log.
So that sort of helps but I didn't get the notification, and you're kind of like, that might be because you're not checking your notifications, because here I have a record that this information was sent, which can be really helpful sometimes.
But you don't get to see it sent because you don't get a CC, so that's really weird.
Indeed.
You don't get a CC, but you can look at your sent messages. So
Oh,
there's a button under my mail for sent, so you can see that it wasn't.
This sent button right here would give you access to any of the messages that you had previously sent.
Okay.
I guess the announcement worked perfect. I was doing last semester so announcements, and it was on my URL, and then I received one email too.
Yeah, that's typically the way, because that's kind of how I remember it too. When I send announcements, it sends the announcement to me also, because that's the way I've customized my notifications. Great questions. Kicking us off in the right direction. Well done. Okay. So that's some great information about the navigation block. If we move down, and again, these could be in a totally different order in your course as well, because you can customize these. You can move them around. You can decide which ones you want, which ones you don't. You can sort of lock down this part of the menu. And I think the idea there is that you want to give students the information they're going to need for the class, but you really don't want to burden them or confuse them with things that are not relevant to the class. And so that's why when you start in your course shell, go ahead and take a look at all the different blocks and sort of determine for yourself, which ones do my students and myself need access to, and which ones do I really just want to put away. In my class, I typically leave up this navigation block, the administration block, because that's for me. I don't even think students see that block anyway.
They can use it to get to their grade.
Okay, so that's how they get to their grade. They might find calendar relevant. I like people because this is how I get to but I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So if we take a look at the administration block, there are some really important things here. This edit settings. First of all, turn editing on, but we'll get to that in a minute. But edit settings is a really important link you're going to want to know about, because when you're on your course homepage, like we are now, this is our course homepage. We haven't drilled into any particular activity or module. We're just looking at the whole thing sort of from a global view. If you press edit settings from this vantage, this is what's going to actually open up your entire course for editing, such as how do I publish my course? How do I choose the theme that I want and the layout that I want? Some of those things. If I were actually in an activity, let's say I had created an assignment, and then I click this button, edit settings, that's actually going to let me edit the settings of the assignment. So there's edit settings for the entire class, and then edit settings for a particular activity or assignment.
Can you show us how that works?
Yes, and I will in just a moment. I just sort of want to run through the rest of the blocks at a high level, and then we're absolutely going to drill into the specifics. So edit settings, if you remember only a few things from today, I'd say remember where edit settings is. You'll want to come back to that time and time again. Users is one way that you can take a look at the enrolled users. I don't think you'll need to fuss with that too much, because that's what you can do by going to participants. I'll show you that in a minute. Grades. These are two that you'll also want to get familiar with. Grades are where you can go and look at the gradebook. Gradebook setup is where you actually set up your gradebook. We will not run through that today. That is one of the more advanced Moodle workshops. The Moodle gradebook can do a lot. And so that's definitely an entire session in and of itself. So I recommend that you come back for that. And then here also under the administration block, should we choose to move forward with an iteration of Moodle, you'll want to know how to back up and restore your class, which is basically like, if I taught this class once and I'm going to teach it again, how can I import that over so I don't have to recreate the whole thing? That backup and restore tool, that's what those do. You won't have to worry about those this semester, but at the end of the semester, if you have the opportunity to teach your classes again, then that's something you'll want to be familiar with. And this button right here, switch role to. this is fun because as you create things in Moodle, you might want to go in and see, well, how is this going to look for my students? Did this survey get set up the way I wanted it to? Does this assignment give me all the buttons? Do my links work, etc.? Switching to this student role temporarily will let you see your class through the eyes of your students, which is really cool. So you can really get in there and play around a little bit and practice pushing buttons as your students will without necessarily, you can do so in a fairly low stakes way that, you don't worry about messing anything up. You can just, if you set up a survey, you can take the survey as a student in your class, and that will allow you to sort of practice and just make sure that everything worked the way you meant for it to. It's a dry run.
Do you ever give in like a quiz, like a pop quiz? Could you do that on Moodle, or the students all have to be all logged in or something like that?
Absolutely. You could give a pop quiz. You can give graded quizzes, ungraded surveys. There are tools for just collecting feedback. I'll at the end of our presentation go through individually the different tools that that Moodle has. But that is definitely something that you could do. If it's a pop quiz, you could let them know that they either need to do that synchronously, meaning here's the time, I need all of you to log in. Maybe your class is on a Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, so that would be your expectation, is that Wednesday at 7, they're all available, and so they can all log in. Or you could just give a quiz and say, just like any other homework assignment, this is going to be due by this date, log in at your convenience and complete the quiz between now and then.
Like if I'm giving you a pop quiz right now.
You sure could develop it in the moment. Yeah, absolutely. If you wanted to, let's say, do you teach a completely online class, or do you have a face-to-face?
Face-to-face mainly.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. In that instance, what you might want to do, you can save things in a draft form.
You can set up time, so you could build a quiz in advance in class, and then you could set up timing on that quiz so that it appears maybe halfway through your class or something like that. And at that point, you would tell your students, okay, everybody go ahead and log on, pop quiz, you can take it.
And they take it because they take it on their phones too.
There is a mobile app. There's a Moodle mobile app, so they could actually download the app or use the web browser. It's not always perfect. So
the phone is a better way for them to take it.
Probably the best way would be on a computer if you can get them access to a computer, but they could do it on the phone.
Definitely would want to leave a little bit of time, just budget a little bit of time in your class if you wanted to do that, because I would guess it'll take students maybe 5-10 minutes, because not everyone will have the Moodle app installed on their phone, or they might just need a few minutes to get to navigate where you want them to go, and then okay, go. So that's something you might just want to budget a few extra minutes for, especially the first time.
Their phone or something like that, then what,
Exactly.
So the ways that I've seen it done successfully is that either early on in the course, the instructor lets the students know this is something you can expect to happen X number of times throughout the course. That way the students can be prepared ahead of time, both mentally, and then maybe they download the application or whatever they need. Or they just show up to class, every class prepared with the technology in case it's one of those days.
Right.
Okay.
Your third option, which is a little more cumbersome, is you could reserve a lab like this, or there's a couple of labs in Stevenson. I know there's a couple in Darwin. And in that way, if you knew that you were going to be issuing a quiz from 7:30 to 8 p.m., you can just go into Sonoma State system, reserve that lab for that period of time, and either teach from that lab or just, okay, everybody quick, over to the lab, log in, take your quiz, and then back to your classroom.
If
Or
I'm going to do a final exam, would I have to do that, go to a lab?
I would recommend it if you want to make sure, and you will want to make sure, that everybody has equal access to the technology, so no one's put at a disadvantage by, as you mentioned, not having a phone or not having, enough bandwidth or whatever the case might be. So those are definitely some good precautions. Whenever I do a lesson that requires students to log in and sort of follow along or do something, I try to reserve one of those labs. And I would recommend doing that sooner than later, because those labs fill up. Just a side note. And
what's the lab in Stevenson? What's the room?
Oh, I don't know those off the top of my head, because there are several.
Technology lab, or what's it called?
Let's see here. If you want to schedule a lab, what I recommend you do is you're going to go to SSU's IT website, and then you'll select this link here in the upper right-hand corner, Computer Labs. Here, so if you go to our SSU IT page, and then the Computer Labs link here in the upper right-hand corner, this actually gives you a link to request a lab. And when you click on that, it'll show you a list of all the labs on campus, what types of computers they have, how many computer stations there are, and then you can look ahead at a calendar and it'll tell you what's been reserved and what's not, and then you can go ahead and make your reservation. They'll immediately send you a confirmation email saying, hey, we've received your request, and then once it's been booked, they'll send you another email confirming that, yes, you have that computer lab for that day and time.
That, like, okay, this class today is going to be in the computer lab. Is that, or would you have people come up to the other place? Or?
I would definitely recommend, yes, absolutely. Students are used to being mobile in their classrooms in that way, but that's actually a really great use of Moodle. So if you knew that on a particular day your class was going to be somewhere else than your usual classroom, that might be an announcement that you want to post in Moodle. You could also create just a quick activity or a tagline that says, friendly reminder, we're in Stevenson XYZ today. And then also certainly, you know, the week before, that verbal reminder of where you're supposed to be. And then I even always go to my classroom and write it on the whiteboard. You're in the wrong place despite my 5 messages, but that's okay. I still want you to get there. All right, so that's how you can switch your role to a student to take a look. When you switch that role, you just come back to this link to switch it back to your usual teacher role. The next block is your calendar block. Again, this is just going to give you an idea of where you are in the class, different events, activities, assignments that are coming up. Your people block, this is one that I definitely check in on. Participants, this lets you know who's in your class. I'm the only one in my class, but it also will let you know the last time they accessed your class. And that's going to be a really useful piece of information. If somebody's like, well, I didn't get the information, you go in and say, well, it looks like you haven't been on our Moodle homepage for 2 weeks. And so the expectation is that you're checking in with that much more regularly to gain this type of information that they perhaps missed.
Now, where are you again?
Yeah,
I missed something there.
no problem.
Or-
We're here. We're just here still in our blocks. So we scrolled down to our 4th block, which is people.
Come on, I'm not able to see that.
And again, that might be because your class might have a slightly different theme than my class. So your,
At the top.
yeah, okay, perfect. So when you click participants, that'll actually take you to the list of students that are enrolled in your class. Activities block lets you know the different types of activities that you've actually set up in your course. Again, latest news we sort of reviewed from the beginning, and it tells you what's coming up. And then there's upcoming events. So I've somehow scheduled some office hours. I had something going on back in November. I'm apparently not up to date with my upcoming events because they're very old. And then recent activities. So these 3, Bob, do you have any insights on how exactly latest news, upcoming events, and recent activities are different?
Yeah, so latest news would display any new announcements that you posted.
Ah, okay.
Post an announcement in latest news. Upcoming events is just connected with your calendar. So if you
Okay.
set up assignments, due dates, quizzes, which start on certain times, or something like that, then those would appear in the upcoming events. And then the recent
Automatically?
automatically. And same thing with the announcements appearing in the latest news that happens close to your pops up there. And then the recent activity, if you're making changes to your site, so say you're updating due dates on assignments, or like when the fires happened just last spring, and many instructors had to change things around, those changes would have been logged in the recent activity so that students could see exactly.
Great.
So that you have a running log.
So just for the purpose of our recording, I'll just sort of reiterate that latest news would encompass any announcements that you had recently made. Upcoming events syncs with the items that are in your calendar, and recent activity might refer to any changes to due dates or changes in activities that you had recently made to your class. Thanks, Bob. All right, so that's a little bit about your blocks. Again, yours could look a little bit different based on the theme of your class, and that we will get into in just a moment, how to actually set up your course. But before we do that, there are 2 things that I want to point out from this view. And I just want to let you know how to get into your account so that you can add a profile picture and customize your notifications. This can appear in a variety of places depending on where you are in Moodle. So right now, anywhere you see your name, that's how you can access your profile and your preferences. So yours could be up here in the upper right-hand corner. It also has to do with how big your screen is. So it has to do with the real estate that's been taken up. So if your screen's maybe not as big as mine, or you're working on a smaller device, some of these buttons can move. But again, if you want to get to your account, just navigate to your name. And so I'm a big baseball fan, so my profile is always Oakland A's. Go Oakland A's. I'm so excited. It's almost baseball season. You'll obviously want to select a picture that represents what you want your students to see of you as the instructor. So again, if you select your name from that drop-down menu and go to profile, that's how you can click here, and it says edit profile, where you can enter any information about yourself. And then if you scroll down, this is how you can actually add your picture. So let me go through that one more time just to make sure everybody caught it. So here you see the location of my name has changed. So it was there on the left, but now from this view, it's up here on the right. So really, to find your account, what you need to do is just find your name. And then
And it should be somewhere on the top there.
yes, yep, that's right. So if I go back to my home page, we see that it's here in the upper right-hand corner. When I was actually in one of my classes, it was along my dashboard view there. So if I go to view my profile or edit my profile, I can open that up for editing. And here's where you can just, enter some information's customizable, some's not. But mostly you'll probably want to know just where to add your profile picture, and you can do that here. And then similarly, when you go into your preferences, this is where you can select messaging. You see here, this time I went to my name and I selected preferences. It's kind of the same as a lot of other probably accounts that you've set up along the way, whether it's your Google Drive or your email. So that similar profile lets you give a profile picture and some personal information. And then your preferences is where you can select messaging here to set up how and what types of things you'd like to receive notifications about and what types of things you would not. And I do recommend you spend a few minutes perusing that area so that you're notified about the things that you want, but are not over notified, because I think we all know that a flooded inbox can become a quick hassle. Any questions about that? What questions do you have about that? Either getting to your profile and uploading a photo or customizing your messaging preferences. Any other comments on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say that if you wanted to be notified every time a student submits to your course, if you have a bunch of assignments, you can do this. If you want to get an email every time anybody submits, or how about only if they submit late, or maybe you want to get an email at the end of the day that shows everybody who submitted that day. So you just get one that shows everybody. All of those sorts of things would be set up in the messaging button there. So just to clarify.
Yeah, so if you know that on a particular day, 30-some students are going to be submitting an assignment, you might want that daily summary instead of getting 30 emails notifying you 30 times that those students had logged in or submitted that work. Similar with some of your discussion forums, if you set up a discussion, do you want a daily summary of who posted, or do you want to know every time somebody adds another thread? So those are things that you'll just want to take a look at and make sure they fit the needs for you.
So we can change language.
Yeah.
If I want to be in Spanish.
Yes.
Yeah, you see that preferred language button there, just under user.
Excellent. Excellent. Another resource that's outside of Moodle, but that lives within Sonoma State, is our accessible syllabus template. And you can go to Sonoma State's homepage and just search accessible syllabus template, and it'll lead you here. So let me show you how I did that. If I just go to sonoma.edu again, and I click the search field here, this little magnifying glass to search for something, and I put accessible syllabus template. That will take me, theoretically, to the accessible syllabus template. And if this is your first time using a learning management system or your first time teaching, it is a great resource to have that can just sort of guide you through what things should I include in my class. It's extensive. I mean, it's pages long. It's so much longer than I think I have ever traditionally made my syllabus. But if you're looking for some great statements about what do I put in as far as an accessibility statement for my students who work with disability services for students with disabilities, how do I connect them to that service? Or how do I say something about the Writing Center? Or what policies do I want to include in my class? This template is great. Let me just pull it up quickly. You could spend quite a bit of time going through this. So in the interest of our time, we'll just look at it quickly. But I did want to make you aware of this resource because it's something that might be able to guide you through this process as far as how do I want to set my course up. And the instructional designer within me wants to recommend to you that each of you set up one module or unit or lesson or however you conceptualize your class at the top of your homepage, and I'll show you what I mean in a moment, that includes some welcome materials, such as your syllabus, maybe a quick video of you introducing yourself if you have the time and a quick phone and you're comfortable in front of a camera, and then some basic information like this. And this could all be encompassed in your syllabus, or you could build it as individual items, but this just gives some recommendations as far as what you want to include for contact information, general course information. Here's some great stuff on library research guides. Here's some information for students about Moodle so that they have a little bit of support also. Goes through IT, course format and instructional methods. Again, and it lets you know what's sort of optional or suggested. You do not have to follow this template. It's really just a guide that might help you to develop your own syllabus and build out your Moodle course.
What's your list of students? Does it flag them if they're disabled?
No, it doesn't. That's something that the students will self-disclose to you if they're registered with DSS services on campus. Usually within the first week or two, they'll bring you a piece of paper letting you know the registered services and accommodations they need, whether it's a note taker or a private quiet space for taking tests, or if they require extra time on any particular assessment. I almost always have those in my hand by the second week of class. But that's something that they'll disclose to you. Great question. Textbook, definitely recommend you include a weekly schedule, although Moodle can really do this for you. If you set up your class like week 1, week 2, week 3, etc., it really creates the schedule for you. Usually I have a schedule in my syllabus, and then I actually build my Moodle page off of that schedule in my syllabus. Does that make sense? Do you have any questions about it? You look like you maybe have a question about that.
This might be, you might be going over this, but
Sure.
how do you upload, I already created a syllabus, so how do you upload that doc?
Perfect.
onto Moodle?
Let's figure that out. Let's go through course setup. Just wanted to make you aware of the resource. Now you know it lives. Encourage you to find it. You know, when you just need some really light late night reading. Ha, ha, ha. All right, so where do I need to go if I want to get into a class? Pop quiz. Where do I navigate if I actually want to locate and log into my class? Yes. What's the other option?
My course.
Yes. Quick learners must be teachers.
Yes.
All right, so again, I'm going to go into my sandbox, but my sandbox isn't published yet, so it's still hiding out here under hidden courses. And let's jump right in. Cool. It might. When did you do that? You're so thoughtful. Nah, Bob, you're so good to me. So does this maybe look kind of like what yours looks like? All right, good. Perfect. All right, so now we are in the course that we've selected from either dashboard or my courses. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually find that administration block. There it is. Because what I want to do is I want to edit the settings of this entire course, not one particular activity or assignment. I want to look at the whole class and edit the settings. So I've found administration and I'm selecting edit settings. And when I do that, it brings me to all these settings. So what I'm going to do so I don't miss anything is click this expand all button. You don't have to do this, but it will save you some trouble later on. So what I did there was I went to administration block, then clicked, selected edit settings, and now I'm going to expand all so that each of these different settings for my class are all going to open up so I don't miss any that I want to pay attention to. So this will be generated for you, your course title and the short name and all of that. Here's an important button. Remember I said earlier if there's only a few things you remember, one of them was remember how to edit your settings. This is the other one. Your students won't see any of your brilliant work unless you make this class public and visible to them, and this is where you do that. So when you select to show this class, it makes it public to the world. You've gone live. As long as it says hide, it is hidden, and only you, Bob, and me will be able to see it. Okay? So again, just to walk through that again, repetition and rehearsal, I went all the way down to my administration block and selected edit settings. Once I got here, I expanded all of my settings. And in this first area, when you're ready, you don't have to do this first. You can build your class first and then come back. But this is like, if there's one step people often forget, it's this one, and it's a big one. So you'll want to show that course. You'll know whether your course is published or not, because when you look at the title up here, if it's still kind of grayed out like this, that means it's hidden. Once you've published it, it'll be bold like the other words around it. So that's another indicator. I hope she's okay. Okay. All right. Then you can give your course a description if you'd like. Again, most of this is optional. It's really the level of detail you want to go into. You don't necessarily need to drag. This isn't where you'd add your syllabus file. This is still, again, the course settings, not necessarily an individual activity setting. We'll show you how to upload a file and make that an activity. Course format. Okay, so remember how my class was looking a little different than your class? Course format and appearance are where you make those determinations. And the cool thing in Moodle is that if you hover over these question marks, it actually gives you a description of what that thing does, which is really handy. You know, you were talking about sort of like the user guides and just that support in the moment. Anywhere you see one of these question marks, that's actually a very handy guide because this is a lot to take in. Later on, you might be going, what was the difference between course format and appearance again? Well, if you select that question mark, it'll remind you of what the difference is. So the formats, right now it's on a topical format. So each week is broken down. You can give it a topic name like Module 1, Introduction to Class. Module 2, Theories of Principles of Psychoanalytic Psychology. Module 3, Operant versus Classical Conditioning. Whatever that topical structure might look like. Or you can do collapsed topics, which means it just appears like a banner and then students can uncollapse it, sort of like the expand all that we just did. Social format, single activity format, and weekly format. I know some people like the weekly format because it automatically inserts the dates of each week for our semester for you, which is pretty handy. So you'll want to maybe, and don't worry, if you select one and then you go back to your course page and you're like, yeah, that's not what I wanted, come back to edit settings and change it. Just you can just sort of play with that in a really low stakes environment, especially if you haven't published your course yet. So it's easy to play. We also, in the Faculty Center, are happy to give you a sandbox to work and play. And I know we're sort of down to the line with the semester upon us now, so you might be feeling like, oh, that would have been really useful 2 weeks ago. Now you're probably building in your live environment, but if you do want a sandbox, either in Moodle or in Canvas, if you want to sort of get yourself familiar with Canvas a little bit, if we end up making that change, we can provide you with that also. All right, and then appearance. Again, these are just kind of fun. I mean, when I first started using Moodle, I was actually pretty amused by this area, and it just gives you a different appearance of the class. So my first class had that really nice image of like the Sonoma County Hills in the background, or at least I assumed it was Sonoma County Hills, and it just changes the way your class looks and feels a little bit. It could change where exactly those blocks are located. And so you'll just want to go in, I mean, maybe spend 10 minutes looking at the different appearances and decide which one seems most intuitive to you or which one will meet the needs of your students best. My favorite, again, just personal choice, is Pioneer. That one I really like. Maybe check it out, see if it's right for you. Showing some good examples over there? Good.
Right here.
Okay.
Does it show it to you as you click on it?
No, not until you say it. Select it, say it.
Right. So we'll leave it here again, just so that mine continues to look like yours, because I think that'll probably be helpful for the remainder of the session. Groups, you can get into some group mode stuff here. Again, we're not going to go into a ton of detail here because I want to make sure we get through the rest of our agenda in the remaining 37 minutes. But those are some of the highlights. Yes.
I have my class divided into study teams,
Okay.
14 to 4, and so that group mode is of interest to me. Is that something I can use for them to organize that?
Yeah, do the groups interact with each other, or do you want them to be totally separate hallways?
No, when we do groups, they have teams. And the first instruction is exchange phones, exchange email, and if you're not going to make it to class, or something's going wrong, or you have a question, or you don't understand something, or you want to call a meeting for a study group, or any of those kinds of things. Then there's a communication component, and then there's a curriculum component, which is basically when we break into group work for this task or that task, and depending on the unit, then they all automatically go to it. In fact, this semester I'm going to have a seated proximity.
Yeah, it sounds like you'd probably want to make use of group mode in some way, and our consultants would be happy to meet with you and design something that works well.
Thank you, Bob.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. And then at the bottom, once you've made your selections, or if you're just playing around and you want to see those selections actually implemented in your class, save and display, and that'll allow you to see the things that you've changed in your course. So again, super important, edit settings, expand all, make sure your course is visible, choose your theme, choose your appearance. Any other things under course settings, Bob, that you think are really important to highlight at this stage
I think you hit them all.
without getting lost in the weeds?
I have a question.
Yes, please.
I missed this about the, show the grade book to students, yes or no?
Yes, and again, that is up to your discretion as the instructor, whether you want your students to be able to see the gradebook. I believe the default is yes, it's going to be visible to your
They can only
students.
see their grade.
Oh, yes, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Big time important, yes. They can only see their grades, their feedback, not that of their peers.
Okay. And when you said you wanted a force of theme, what elegance, clean, what are the ones you think are good to do?
Again, just personal preference. I really like the Pioneer one that's there at the bottom. That's what the initial class that I was showing you sort of look like. This is the Do Not Force a Theme class, this one that Bob enrolled me in here. So if I just go back to the home page here, it just gives me a topic structure, and it's pretty clean. It's a fairly blank slate that you can build from. It gives you your blocks here on the side. Again, same option to hide them or dock them, customize them however you want. The theme just looks a little bit different than, and I encourage you, just take maybe 10 minutes and just sort of toggle between a few of them, select one, save and display, and say like, oh, do I like that? Be like, oh gosh, no. And oh, yeah. So, and then just the one that feels most intuitive to you. Did you want to?
Yeah, I'm just showing your sandbox that you demoed earlier. So this is an example of the Pioneer theme, which is one of the more dramatic things. Many of the other ones are kind of subtle changes, but themes can typically change colors or text styles on your course. The Pioneer one adds an image to the top. That's what
So where do you add the image?
It comes up automatically by
Oh,
selecting Pioneer, that particular one. Maybe that's why I like it.
and then we can show you how to change.
But yes, there are ways that you can add your, and Bob actually showed me how to do that when I first started using Moodle, how to, if you want a custom image that goes along with your class, which is kind of fun too,
Well,
really.
actually, I just did that and now it looks like that.
All right.
Okay, it didn't do it until I said save.
Perfect. Yeah. It'll reflect those changes once you save them. Yes, please.
Question on gradebook. I know there's another
Mhm.
class for that, but you need a gradebook.
Yep.
For the students. So if you don't use this one, actually I already went in, I have a Mac and I went into Numbers,
Okay.
and Numbers has a gradebook there. I don't know. I'd have to see what the gradebook looks like in Moodle.
Sure.
I guess it would be better to just take that class and
I definitely recommend you take the workshop so you can get the feel of it. A few things that I know instructors do, you have a tool in your Mac that could work beautifully for you. It just won't necessarily make that information visible to students. And so they might just check in with you every 4 to 6. The really good students are going to check in with you about their grades on a regular basis if they don't have access to this. I used to like
my student evaluation feedback.
They wanted you to use the grade book.
Understanding of grades.
I see.
I use just my own spreadsheet.
Yep.
Throughout the semester to track. And it was as much an attendance tool as it was a grading tool. But I did get feedback that the grade book was an important thing.
Yeah.
For them.
I think students really feel that way.
Absolutely.
But like Kristen's saying, if you're more comfortable using your own tools, you do have the ability to import, say, a spreadsheet into your Moodle gradebook. So maybe at the end of every week, you could have imported your spreadsheet into the Moodle gradebook, which then updates the gradebook so the students can see it in real time.
Well, it's probably going to be addressed in the assessment module this afternoon.
The gradebook, the assessment module is more about like quizzing and questionnaires and those sorts of assessments, and we have a separate workshop that is like just pure gradebook.
What do you do?
Yeah. It's because you can spend an hour and a half on gradebook.
I think we're offering that this round. If not, just set a meeting with
Yeah.
consultants and give you a personalized.
And what I can recommend, since you're all fairly new to Moodle, is if you're going to use the Moodle gradebook, fully support that. I did it I used to do what you did. I used to just use the Moodle homepage to push information to my students, but I did grades on a spreadsheet. This last semester, I challenged myself to move into the Moodle gradebook because I wanted to become more comfortable with the tool. And that worked really well. But what I recommend to you is keep it simple. There are some people on campus that do some fancy things with their gradebook and percentages and group, and that's cool. It's really neat that it can do that before your first time around. And given that we aren't exactly sure where this campus is going from a learning management system perspective, I would say invest your time building a class that you really like and keep your gradebook fairly simple. What I also did just as an added security, about once a month, I would also take the information in my Moodle gradebook and export it and just save it on my desktop or in my Google Drive just to make sure if anything went wrong with Moodle, which, technology happens. Sometimes my phone really likes me and sometimes it's mad at me and then I'm lost. I'm a little lost. So I wanted to make sure that student information was never lost. So just as a backup plan, I would export the gradebook once a month. That way I had record of what I'd done. And there's a great attendance tool in Moodle. So if you want to nix the spreadsheet and build attendance into your Moodle page, that's something I did this last semester too that actually worked really well.
I think I'm wary of, and this was something that I experienced in Canvas, is the weighting.
Yeah.
How do you weight
Right.
the grades? Because the students are going to say, okay, I got an 80 and I got a 90 and I got an 80, so I should be, this is what my
Right.
grade should be.
Right.
And you want to factor in participation, how many times was a student late, all of those kinds of the subjective part.
Right.
So what I'm going to put into my syllabus is 50% of this is going to be subjective, 50% is going to be objective.
Okay.
Don't get misled by your grades. Okay. And I'm just trying to move them out of, okay, doing enough to get a C or a B or that kind of mentality,
Right.
to as opposed to I want to learn as much as I can.
Mm-hmm.
The more you learn, the better you're going to do.
Yeah. If you choose to weight particular categories in your class, like say quizzes and tests are going to be worth 50%, participation's worth 25, something else is worth 25, you can set up in the Moodle gradebook or in Canvas. In Moodle, they're called categories, and in Canvas, they're called assignment groups. So that tool does exist, and it will automatically calculate those percentages for you. And so that is something, I wouldn't say that's a super advanced feature, but it's something you'll want to sit down with somebody the first time to do to make sure that
How would you
goes well.
take attendance on this thing?
I will show you that. I will show you that. Okay, so we've talked about editing your settings, and that when you're on your home page like this and you click edit settings, you're editing the entire course settings. But if we were to actually build an activity, now we've asked a couple of times, how do I build an assignment tool? How do I actually build in a file like my syllabus? So let's do that. The first thing you're gonna wanna see this big green blaring button here that says turn editing on. You won't be able to do anything without turning that button on. So that's the third thing, okay? And then you can totally tune out for the rest of my presentation. No, I'm just kidding. So make your course visible. That's an important thing to remember from today. Edit settings under your administration block is going to be important to you, and this turn editing on button. I'd say those are three really big highlights to take away from this presentation. Once you turn that on, take a look at it now, right? Now when I click this button, you see that the interface changes a little bit, and I have all these edit and add activity buttons show up. And that's what's actually going to allow me to build in my course shell. If you don't see these buttons, you just need to turn editing on with that green button in the upper right hand corner. And when you're done, you can either log out or you can select, now it's turned red, to say, okay, turn it off. Yes?
But still, we haven't uploaded.
Nope, we haven't. We've just enabled ourselves as the instructor to now make changes to the class, such as uploading a file or something like that.
Okay, so that's interesting. So when it says off, it actually is on.
Correct.
That's confusing.
A little bit. So what it's saying here is turn editing on. So green means go, red means stop.
Okay, it's very important.
Yeah. Luckily, you have a 50-50 shot there. So that one hopefully won't become a roadblock for you. All right, so turn the edit button on and off. And these topics, again, you can determine what you want your weekly, modular, unit, however you conceptualize your class, maybe whatever the flow of your syllabus follows. Usually I'm a module 1 topic kind of person, or week 1 and then a topic, but whatever you feel like will seem consistent and logical for your students so that they can cleanly and clearly navigate your class is what you'd want to select, either by pressing this handy little pencil button that shows up when I hover over this, or you can go over here and select to edit. And if I edit the topic, again, I haven't uploaded anything, I'm just setting myself up for success here. You're like, wait, I can't type into this, it's not letting me. That's because this little button is selected. It wants you to use the default topic of topic 1. So you could, but if you want to customize this and give it your own name, or let's go with week 1, welcome. That's how you can give that topic a new name and then save your changes down at the bottom. And now it'll take us back to our home page. And now you see topic 1 has become week 1 and welcome. And you can go ahead and scroll through any of those to do that. Okay, see this announcements has already been added for us in Moodle. That is added for you. So any course shell you have will automatically have that announcement. But if you want to add an activity, let's start with adding the syllabus, the file first. So when I click add an activity, it actually gives me a very extensive list of things that I can do in Moodle. Some you will use regularly and others you will probably never use. So let's go through some of these. And again, what I do like about Moodle is when you select one of these, it gives you an explanation of what it is. So an assignment is probably what you think of. You are giving your students some sort of instruction or direction, and you're asking them to deliver something to you. They need to submit some type of work. So if you have a formal assignment, whether it's something you want them to submit to you on paper in class, or if it's something you want them to select and then submit digitally, electronically online, assignment is the name of your game. Here's that attendance tool you were asking about. So it's the second item down. And when you set that up, you'll have to do a little bit of setup with it. You can set up all of the weeks. You can omit certain weeks. So I know that once a semester, I give my students a virtual week because I ask them to do a lot of out of class activities. And so to give them a little bit of time, I always give them a virtual week where they don't have to come to class, and things like spring break. You can actually build those into your attendance also, so it doesn't take those weeks into account in your final attendance score. So that's pretty handy.
So do you fill it out or do the students fill it out?
You fill it out. That's something that you'll have to do. And it has 4 indicators. It's like present, late, excused.
Yeah.
Okay, so there you go. Exactly. Oh, here they are. Yeah. Present, absent, late, or excused.
So they can't like just punch it on present and then that option is gone later. They could later go in and add they were present for 10 classes.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
That's why.
Definitely something I like to keep my thumb on last semester, or that might be maybe a TA might be able to do that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, TA's not attendance.
Right. So you have a chat activity, which enables a synchronous real-time chat opportunity for your students. There's it.
That's between the students or between you and the students?
If you want. It's just an open chat room.
Okay. There are a lot of there's like 3 or 4 different ways that you can collect information. So there's choice, feedback, and questionnaire. And these are all ways. Choice lets you ask a single question, just one question, like, what do you want to do in class this week? This or this? And then students can sort of like vote on that. A questionnaire allows you to create surveys. And then feedback, again, is a little bit like a custom survey, but where you can give them more than one question, like the choice option. So again, it's much too much for you to absorb and remember in this session. You'll want to just take some time. And, when I teach individuals to some of the best practices for online or blended instruction, what we recommend is just pick a few tools the first time around. Tools that you're comfortable with, tools that you feel like you could feel comfortable explaining to your students. Then once you know you've done that and you've mastered that your first semester teaching in the platform, then add a few more next semester so that you build on your skills rather than being like, that's cool, that's cool. They all are really, really neat, but you want to also make sure that you're comfortable with the technology and won't get overwhelmed at the beginning because it is sort of a lot to learn. But Moodle supports you in this way in letting you know what each of these at a fairly high level does and how to implement it. Forums are our discussion tool. Okay, so like a discussion board, and there are a few different types. You can set up a single thread where you post something and then students reply to it. You can do threaded replies. You can set up discussions where you say, you must post your own work before you can see the work that your peers have posted so that there's no opportunity like, oh, I'm just kind of going to reword what they said. So there are some ways that you can customize that. External tool. For those of you who are going to venture into the world of like using an external tool like voice thread, right? Or Zoom, or Zoom setup somehow different.
We've got a Zoom.
Oh, we do have a separate Zoom button, huh? So external tool would take you to VoiceThread, which is a really fun tool that we could teach you how to use another time. It's basically a video capture tool that allows you could record a video or do a screencast, and then students can come in and actually comment on that video. You can ask them to comment on particular things. They can interact with each other in the video. It's a pretty cool thing. Again, whole other session that we could do just on VoiceThread because there's a lot of neat tools. Do you have any more questions so far? All right. Turnitin, if you plan to use Turnitin either to annotate and give some feedback to students, Turnitin has some great feedback tools, or if you're interested in using it sort of as a plagiarism checker, Turnitin works really well for that. And then Zoom, we're using Zoom right now to actually record this session. So if you ever wanted to invite lecturers in remotely, or you wanted to have a guest that can't actually make it to your class, or you want to do what we're doing here, and that's basically record you speaking in your session, or if you want to hold virtual digital office hours, let's say you, gosh, just can't get to Sonoma State today, but you sure can Zoom with me and we can still get our work done. You have a free account with Zoom as by virtue of being a Sonoma State instructor. So that's a really neat tool. Yes, please. Yeah.
If my students write compositions in Spanish,
Mm-hmm.
but if I make Turnitin, it's going to check plagiarism in Spanish as well?
Yeah, it's set up for a number of other languages. Spanish as well.
Okay, but it will check my grammar?
It should, yeah. I mean, I'm not bilingual in Spanish, but from everything that I've read, it works. And I'm fairly certain we have other instructors who are using it in Spanish.
Okay.
Wonderful. That's really neat. Your class is going to be fun.
So let us know about your experience if you
Okay,
do
I
use it.
will, yeah, I plan to.
So here we get into your question, how would I add a syllabus? There's a couple of different ways. You could create a page and give it some context. Like here, you can embed a file to a page, correct? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so you could create a content page and say, welcome to this class. Step 1 is click on the syllabus on this content page to get you started. Can't wait to see you week 1. If you wanted to include some text along with your syllabus file. Or if you just want to give them the file and say, here's your syllabus, you should know what to do with this, then you would select file. And let's go ahead and practice that. Okay, just before I move on to file, I like this book tool. It's really neat. It's kind of like scrolling through the pages of a book that you create. I will give you one big waving red flag. If we migrate to Canvas, this is one of the things in Moodle that doesn't come over at all. So if we stick with Moodle, I would encourage you to use the book tool in the future. But let's maybe hold off on that tool until we know more about where this campus is headed, because I'd hate to see you create something really cool that won't port over. I just created a 16-week professional development course that entirely uses the book tools. So I might have some cleanup to do next semester, but that's okay. Okay, sorry, I just wanted to give that side note. File. So let's add the file. And now that we've added that, what it gives us the option to do is now we can, spruce it up, give it a title. So this is going to be your course syllabus. If you add a description, that description's gonna show up on the home page with this activity. Most of the time, I don't add a description because I feel like students can actually drill into the activity to see what it is. And then down here is where you can either, let me see if I can grab a file off of my desktop. Oh, this might not work. Oh yeah, okay. So you can either grab a file and drag and drop it into this field, or if you're not able to drag and drop, you can click this button here with the little plus sign, and that will allow you to select your file from any location, whether it's a thumb drive or if it's just saved on your desktop, or if you need to get into your Google Drive, wherever you store your things. Let me walk through that one more time. So I've added the file resource. I've given it a name. I can optionally include some text. So let me do that so you can see what it looks like. please review the course syllabus prior to our first class this Thursday. All right, and then again, I'm going to just select whichever file I want. Go back to that same one. Open. And now I'm going to upload this file. There's my file. I have a few other options. So do I want it to display automatic? Do I want it to be embed? And if I embed it, that means that when they open that, it's automatically going to display the file without them having to download it. I can force them to download it. So as soon as they open it, it's boom, automatically going to download for them. It can auto open it, or it can appear in a pop-up. I see that you have a comment. Anything? Okay.
Yeah, just make sure you check the checkbox above underneath the description.
Oh, to show it. Okay. Thank you. See, a lot of little details.
Now, if you wanted to go directly on to week 1, you wouldn't use this one, right?
Say more.
Do you want, I noticed I had topic 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, all that. So how do I know where this is going to drop in?
That's a great question. So let me go ahead and save. There's save and return to course, which will take you back to your home page, or save and display will just show you what this is basically going to look like for students. So let's save and return to course for our purposes. And now we know that's going to live under week 1 because that is because we chose this add an activity or resource within week 1. If we wanted to add one to week 2, there's a week 2, and
I thought it came in through file another way.
what we did there, first step, that's a great question. So here we are, let's sort of start fresh again. So here we are at our course homepage. When students click into the course, this is what they're going to see. And so when we select to add an activity or resource, let's try doing one here under week 2 or topic 2. We would eventually change this to say week 2, right? Now we're under week 2. And if we choose to add an activity under week 2, it gives us that same list. So we can choose what we want to do. And let's say this time we want to add, this time let's add a content page. So now we can add that. And now that's going to add that under that topic 2, week 2, because that's where we selected to add that. And again, we can give it a name. This is going to be Introduction to Psychoanalytic Theory. I can choose a description that's going to show on that homepage or not. I often feel, and again, this is just personal preference, but I feel like adding a description to your homepage often clutters your homepage. Some people really like that level of detail on their homepage, but to me, it just kind of creates a scroll of death that I like my students to not have. But if it's important, if that provides for you the context to this item and you want that to be on the display page, by all means, do that. And then select display description. But down here is actually the content. So when students move into this page, this is where they're really going to be able to see. So here I can upload images, I can upload media, I can upload hyperlinks, I can add any text I want them to see, and then, you know, I can grab some photos that I have. Maybe I want to use, oh, I don't have an account for that. But if you did, you could grab something from Flickr or from your Google Drive once you've logged in, or I could just grab something off of my desktop. Like Canvas icon sure would seem counterintuitive in my Moodle presentation. So let's say I wanted to include some alt text. Save that image. Oh, there, now I have an image in my content page. I can grab a file. So I can go ahead and upload a file if I need. Like say this is where maybe you wanted to give some context and then give your students that syllabus. So you
URL downloader.
say more.
The URL downloader. Right above Wikimedia.
Right above.
That list.
Let me just save this. Do you mean this?
So if you go back to the image upload,
Okay.
and then,
Browse repositories.
yeah, I think that's where we were. Yeah. Is this URL downloader down at the bottom?
Let's find out.
Let's see. So if you put in a URL, it'll grab as many images of that URL that it can find. And select those images.
Thank you. That taught me something new.
If I want to direct the kids to the National Steinbeck Center for our Tria Flat unit, I can put that URL.
If you want them to go to the actual website, then there's a different method. Which
Yeah, let's grab this. So let's, the place that you were just referring to, what was it called again?
Steinbeck.
National Steinbeck Center.
Okay. So let's say, for example, you want them to go, please also navigate to the Steinbeck XYZ. If I highlight that language and select this link button here in my rich text editor, and if you hover over any of these long enough, it'll give you a brief description. And then I paste that URL. I like to always open it in a new window because then students don't lose their Moodle page. It actually pops open a second browser page. Does that make sense? And then create the link. Now, when my students go to my class, this will actually be a hyperlink. You can also just take the link and paste it like that. It's all spelled out. But if you just want your link to associate with some language, this becomes a hyperlink, and so your students will see that it's a clickable link. That's right. So we could also say, please check your SSU website this week for XYZ reason. So if I highlight SSU website, because that would make sense, that's a good area. So, and then I create the link, then I can post that link, ask it to open in a new window and create the link, and now that language has become hyperlinked. Does that make sense? Okay.
Rather than just typing in the website address?
You also can. You can, for sure. Sometimes they're really long.
Okay.
And so that's really great for accessibility purposes, though. It is kind of a nice option for students to not only have a hyperlink like we created here with the words, but sometimes it actually is for screen reader accessibility, nice to have it spelled out. But, you know, sometimes if you give a Google Share link or something, it's like a line and a half of text. If you want to shorten that, then choosing something, you know, like some language that matches that link, like this website or, you know, the Steinbeck Institution or Sonoma State's webpage, just highlight that portion and then insert that long URL link, and then it'll give you sort of a cleaner way to present that to your students. So again, we're just working on our content page. Got a couple of other settings here. Yes, we want it to show. No, I don't want to add any restrictions. So this time, instead of saving and returning to the course homepage, I'm going to save and display because I want to see what this looks like. And for some of the tools in Moodle, you will need to save and display. So for the attendance tool, for example, when you build that, you'll want to press save and display so that you can actually go to your administration box, click edit settings, and that's actually how you're going to be able to set up your weeks of attendance. And we can sit together and work on that if you'd like. So let's save and display. Did I miss something? What did I miss? I'm looking good here. I'm looking good here. Yep. Do what I tell you to.
Shortly.
Yeah, let's see what happens. And here's my content page that I created. So again, I'm in the actual assignment. So now if I go down to edit settings, it's going to let me edit the actual activity settings, not my class. How does that make sense to you? Does that make sense? Because I'm talking about two different versions of edit settings. If I'm on my course homepage and I click edit settings, it's going to allow me to edit the settings of the entire course.
So the
But-
system knows where you are.
Mhm.
So when you click on edit settings from this point of view, you're editing that.
You got it.
Perfectly said. In fact, couldn't have and didn't say it better. Well done. Thank you. Can you come to all of our sessions? All right. And now you're thinking, okay, well, now I'm stuck in this assignment. How do I get back to my course homepage? Follow your breadcrumbs. So here's my course title. This will take me back to my course page, or I can go navigation and get back to my course page. So just follow your breadcrumbs. And now what we've done is we've customized our module topic, week 1 welcome. We've added our syllabus by adding a file, and we gave it a description, and we see that because we selected that little button, that description's showing on the homepage, totally your discretion. And now we created a content page, and if students click into that, they're going to see your handiwork with 2 hyperlinks, one here and one here, and those will take me to different locations. So that's just a high-level introduction, Moodle 101 with 3 minutes left to spare. What immediate questions can we answer for you before you go into your next exciting session? Yes?
If we need specific coaching, what is the best way to make an appointment in the faculty center?
That's a great question. Bob was had the forethought to bring some business cards. We are almost directly below where we are now on the first floor of the library. We're sort of right around the corner from the Charlie Brown entrance, and we're almost directly across the breezeway from IT Help Desk. There's a little sign that hangs up there that says Faculty Center, and that's where you can find us, and our student assistants will be happy to help set you up with one of us. Again, we encourage you to go to the Faculty Center website, sonoma.edu/faculty center. This is where you also can take a look at our workshop schedule and sign up. So we have VoiceThread, Moodle
You
assessment.
see the one for gradebook in there?
Not yet.
Not yet.
No gradebook.
So
Which is maybe better. The gradebook is difficult to do with a group because gradebook's such a personal thing. Yeah, so setting up a consultation is, I think, always best.
So
And
what's better than gradebook?
as opposed to joining us for a gradebook workshop,
Yeah.
just go ahead and come downstairs and set up an appointment to meet with one of us individually. Is that what?
Call or email the
Yeah.
information on that card. You just set up an appointment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so there's no online.
You wouldn't want it
Mechanism.
online. It's so much better face to face.
Okay.
Oh, I
No,
don't want
I
that.
meant to make the appointment.
Oh, no, yeah, sorry. Yeah, you're right. Call, email, or walk in.
Okay.
Are you available every day, 9 or 8?
Weekdays, 8 to 5.
And the afternoon session, is that gonna be in this room? I didn't write that down myself.